but he got a
why most United States of America states? Why most United States of America states? I don't know about that. Why most states in the United States of America is going broke? There's over 27 states that's operating at a deficit. Most of them are liberal, and a lot of them are on the pathway to bankruptcy if they don't do something differently. Let's talk about it. Make sure you're like the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications. Let's get into it.
State governments in the U.S. are running out of cash.
After meeting their obligations, we have very little more left.
One count suggests that 27 states lack the necessary funds to pay their bills. The problem is most prominent in states like Connecticut, New Jersey, and Illinois.
Not only the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois is running straight into a brick wall in terms of its finances. The city of Chicago is facing $1 billion deficit. The state's facing a massive deficit while also needing to bail out. The Chicago Transit Authority, Chicago Public Schools is asking for a bailout. The state cannot afford these things.
The states received $800 billion from the federal government to kick off the decade. That spending obscured long-running issues.
What we're seeing is largely a return to earth from the surpluses.
You know, we saw a big increase in income taxes. There was really like a bit of an economic boom.
The states now are working with tighter budgets as the country's population and infrastructure ages. Even economically powerful states see trouble ahead.
To the degree that the states are relying on federal aid in terms of daisy chain and fundability,
State governments account for 15% of the nation's economic output, and they employ 13% of the U.S. workforce. So why
Why is states employing the majority of the workforce? That's so dumb.
are so many state governments going broke? And what can they do to repair their finances? State governments pay for much of the nation's systems of education, healthcare, transportation, and public housing.
So it's not state governments, it's taxpayers, but we'll get there. I'm gonna break it down for that from the system's perspective.
They receive tremendous amounts of help from the federal government to do that. In 2022, federal grants covered 38% of total spending from state governments. That was a bit more than usual.
During the pandemic, we saw a lot of work.
So, essentially what they're describing to you guys is that the states then became reliant. It's just like institution funds, right? It may be temporary, it may be proposed to be temporary, but the states then become dependent on it in order to balance their budgets. Similar to the cities, right? And so what they do is they get these federal grants because they basically get more borrowing, more money, running up inflation and a deficit. And so they, in the name of the pandemic, started to distribute more funds, and that's how they hired more teachers, and they kept them on the payroll. And so instead of these states actually learning how to manage their budget more effectively, and only budgeting for and planning for, you know, even when you get this infusion, even when you get these couple of years of good years, because the federal government is going to subsidize you through the taxpayers, which then raises the cost of living for most of us, and it also puts us at a deficit as far as them having to raise more tax money and more tax dollars, which you then get
Appreciate that thumbs up.
AOC and Kamala Harris and Biden saying, hey, more rich people need to pay their fair share. Oh, you got drunk off of COVID money. And so what they did was, they knew that it wasn't sustainable, but instead of us having responsible legislators on a state level in most of these places, and the city, saying, you know what, we can't make this into our yearly budget. We can't make this part of our yearly budget. This is a confusion, but this is not something that we actually depend on. It's just like you. Budgets are very much the same. They just get bigger, and they get more irresponsibly used depending on what government agency is using them. And it's just like your own regular budget. It's just like you and your regular budget. What happens is you become more dependent on money that you know you can't sustain on. You go and buy cars, you go and do all this other stuff. You come in.
These sisters who look like even know each other. Let's see who knows Meredith better, her sister Megan or her preferred shopper Sam.
What is my backup for skim milk?
Fairlife, 1%, 2%.
That is
Meg,
right.
you couldn't even get a word out. Your own sister is left speechless.
You go and buy cars, you go and do all this other stuff, and you know that you can't actually manage your car and all on it. You can't maintain your lifestyle. Me personally, I generate a lot of income, but at the same time, I use the majority of it to invest, and the actual cost of maintaining my lifestyle is very, very low. So even if you're going through the ebbs and flows, even if you have a company that then goes through a lull or may not be as profitable or make a lifestyle change, you're largely unaffected because you were never dependent on that money in the first place. That was just a boost. In that boost, you then use it to pay off debt or invest in another company or generate more revenue by investing in this or increasing your business. You don't become dependent on the money, and that's why we have to be more fiscally responsible and why we also have to elect leaders that understand how to manage budgets more effectively. Let's continue.
One-time revenue, one-time expenditures.
The fuck is he talking about?
Obscuring these long-term challenges that states face.
The ensuing economic boom strengthened state coffers and increased revenues. The increase in revenue helped state leaders lower taxes and increase spending.
We, you, all of us together, delivered both the largest tax cut ever by a huge margin and the largest increase in teacher salaries in our state's history.
We understand that that's, something that is politically palatable, particularly in the time of an election.
So they use that to market it to you guys to get the vote for it, but they can't sustain it, and so it then becomes a moot point because they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. They can't sustain it, and this is why we need to become more informed as voters and also participate on a local level because these people are finessing y'all. That's just the facts.
It is something that if those receipts decline, we may see some future imbalances between, expenditures and revenues that states will have to correct.
But virtually every state made a tax cut. In some cases, this is a very intentional plan for states to spend down these unexpectedly high revenues. On the other side, this could really reflect, tightening budget conditions and states needing to draw on those dollars to help make ends meet right now.
But the federal funds given the states will run out in 2026 as a cost of living crisis hits many parts of the country.
For too many, the cost of living is too high.
The higher cost of living is making some state leaders consider tax relief. That includes places like Wyoming and North Dakota.
States that do well are North Dakota, Idaho, South Dakota. And what these states do have in common is that they have a relatively limited fiscal footprint.
Many policymakers across the states did pretty well managing the pandemic era budget surpluses. The huge looming question out there is around the long-term affordability of the tax cuts and spending increases that were enacted.
Okay, I'll just do them later.
State governments also have to manage long-running financial liabilities.
There are states like Illinois, Connecticut, and New Jersey had a lot of debt after the great financial crisis. The main reason for their weak fiscal stance is the pension obligation.
Roughly 86% of public employees receive pensions. These are retirement plans that provide guaranteed income for life.
State and cities, in order to attract public servants, maybe paying them less money than they would make in the private sector, provide generous pensions, and they ended up getting behind.
Do you guys know how they incentivize people to work for the federal government instead of going into the private sector? It's three ways. There's three main pictures. Number one, they pitch it to you based off of stability. So you're less likely to get laid off if you actually work for the public sector instead of working for the private sector. Because they can always go to the well and get more money from the federal government, or they can just tax taxpayers more, okay? Number two, they incentivize you by the benefits because you usually don't make as much money if you are inside of the private sector, and you're much more likely to have some tumultuous life changes because the private sector will adjust according to whatever their budget is.
Why is it
whatever else they bring in revenue, right? You work for a great company, they probably do well. You don't work for a great company, or your company don't do something, it's about to get laid off. And so they also incentivize you by saying that, hey, job stability and the benefits. Double match this, we'll give you a pension, all that stuff. Well, guess what? At some point, they're gonna have to manage that so that they'll always be able to put more into that pension while you're still alive and while your spouse is still alive, because they promised you that benefit.
These mushrooms make you feel better. Like, a lot better. These mushrooms make you feel better by keeping you calm and helping you focus. They keep you stress-free, but sharp enough to get things done. These mushrooms help reduce bloat and improve your digestion, so you can trust your gut instead of worrying about it. These mushrooms make you feel better. They boost your energy so you can embrace the day and help ease the aches and pains so you can get up and do it again tomorrow. So to recap, these mushrooms keep you healthy and energized, help your gut feel better, and sharpen your focus while remaining calm. Oh, by the way, they taste good too. Someone should make a coffee out of this stuff. Rise. Feel better.
3 years ago, the world we knew had disappeared.
More of us are gonna die.
To that benefit. They promised you this healthcare coverage for the rest of your life. They promised you this pension. They promised you to be able to double match your contribution into your 403B. And so that's another way that they get you to then buy in. And then the last way that they get you to buy in is they say, hey, if you work for the public sector or for a nonprofit or for a government agency for the next 10 years, we'll put you on an income-based repayment plan for your student loans, and we'll forgive your student loans. Those are the ways that they recruit you. But guess what? Somebody has to come in and manage their budget effectively, even when the governor goes out and the new one comes in, the mayor goes out and the new one comes in, aldermen and city council people
38 and 2.
New people come in. They're going to have to manage that. That guy Quincy says, no lie, Anton, I had the best benefits ever when I worked for the state. Exactly, right? They give you great benefits. I worked for the University of Michigan. They double matched my 401k. It didn't pay me a lot of money, but I got the experience. They also made sure that they took care of me and made sure that they paid for my continuing my education. So they paid for any classes once I transferred over from a community college into a major university. And so I was able to still forego having to pay any money so that I would then wouldn't have to pay my own money for major universities or take out student loans. And so there's ways and there's reasons to leverage that, right? And so you get great benefits, you get great healthcare coverage and all of that stuff. You just may not make nowhere near as much money as you do in the private sector. So you got to balance that out. But again, they have to manage those pensions. They have to manage that budget. They have to manage those benefits. They have to manage all of that, right? And so that then comes with the benefits of working in a public organization or in the public sector or for a government agency versus working in the private sector. That's why I have so much criticism for Kamala Harris and these lifetime politicians that then craft these policies on experiences that they've never had. You've never worked in the private sector before. You don't really know what business owners. You've never started a business before. And so you don't know anything about this. The only thing you know is about being a lifetime politician. You got a guaranteed salary, a guaranteed benefits package, a guaranteed budget, and you're going to get rich from it. And we already know how to get rich from it. Let's continue.
If pension liabilities are fully accounted for, as many as 27 states lack the money to pay the bills.
What goes a little bit under the radar is that pension liabilities are an extremely expensive form of debt. The portion of the pension that is unfunded increases by 7% every single year.
This debt leaves states with less money to fund public programs.
So we're talking hospitals, we're talking about roads, we're talking about schools.
Take Illinois, for example, which owes money to former employees, but has less than half of the funds raised to pay them back.
And that ain't even talking about the city. That's the state of Illinois. And they have a population. You know what? It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense as to why they're so adamant about getting more migrants on the tax rolls, and migrants for Illinois and Chicago is like an investment. It's a longer term play and a longer term investment. They want them to buy homes there. They want them to go to the schools there. They want them to be open businesses there. Ultimately, they're hoping, not guaranteeing, but they're hoping that migrants become a part of the fabric of Chicago because so many people are leaving because they mismanage the state and the city so horribly. They're hoping for them to become a part of the fabric of the system. It kind of reminds you of Minneapolis, where Tim Walz is from. I don't know anybody that says, man, I can't wait to move to Minneapolis. They don't do that. They don't move to the Twin Cities, okay? So what happens is they've replaced the people that then leave with a Somali population that then is basically taking over Minneapolis, that's taking over Minnesota, and they're so ingrained in the fabric of the system, they become a new base for them, which then everybody that's a part of those government branches have to then petition them for their vote and meet their expectation because now they maintain power. Because everybody wanted to move out. Everybody wanted to move to Florida. Everybody wanted to move to Texas. Everybody wanted to move to all of these places. I'm telling you that they're investing into a population that ultimately they're hoping to become a part of their taxpayer base and their voter rolls and also paying the property taxes by giving them a leg up inside of their communities. They're playing a long game instead of pouring into the people that's already there. And so many people are leaving these places because they can't afford to, nor do they want to subject themselves to the crime and the statistics and the problems that's going on inside of these states and these communities at all.
In analysis from JP Morgan that says in order to actually fund these enormously generous promises that were made decades ago, you would have to double the state income tax overnight in Illinois.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has steadily kept spending on areas like roads, in addition to education.
Penny by penny, we are still working together, saving important things for our state.
This requires tax increases to balance the budget. But that option may not be available to a state like Illinois, which already has relatively high tax rates.
Using taxes.
Look at the places that got the highest tax rates. Look at this. New York. Highest tax states. New York, Connecticut, Hawaii. I thought about going to visit Hawaii for the winter. Maybe I'll do it next year. I don't want to do it this year because I just want to stay home. I just want to stay home and work on my studio. Vermont, California, New Jersey, Illinois, Virginia, Maine, and Delaware. Top 10 high tax states.
Typically high tax rates.
Using taxes to raise additional revenue is limited.
Higher taxes tend to make people move, especially top earners. That's according to studies on states like California.
When the marginal
27 and 2
increases by 3%.
All right, that's what you
California
do.
loses about
We good.
48% in the tax
Still gonna
base
show
in the
up.
top income bracket. That's actually substantial because it's like 1% of the tax base in the very high bracket, which for the most part accounts for
No
the
trolls?
majority of tax revenues.
No
overall.
trolls? Anybody got nothing to say? Nothing.
Moving
You
forward,
got no
state
jokes
governments
today?
must respond to emerging risks like more extreme weather, an aging population, and migration.
Migration, I believe, is going to be one of the biggest issues that will face the country.
Now, all of the states is also in competition with each other to get more people to move to their states so they can increase their voter rolls. Ultimately, it's going to be a lot of states that suffer if they don't start to course correct, and if these migrants and actually these investments in people don't start paying off, it's going to be havoc. It's going to be hell to pay. I think that Oakland and Chicago is going to be the next major cities that suffer.
Shop Amazon early holiday deals now.
has charged 3 people in a murder-for-hire plot from Iran targeting President-elect Trump and an American journalist.
2 of the men were arrested in New York and appeared in court just yesterday. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney joins us now. Ken, this is a big deal. What new details do we have at this moment?
It is a big deal, Morgan and Vicky, and the Justice Department announcing these murder-for-hire charges. They say that the orchestrator of the plot is still in Iran, and they say that he was working for Iranian intelligence, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and that the 2 men that he hired are the people that they arrested in New York. And they say that the reason they know that Donald Trump was among the targets of this plot was that man, the orchestrator, Farhad Shakiri, actually spoke to the FBI from Iran with voluntary interviews and gave details about this plot, knowing he could not be captured in Iran by U.S. law enforcement. And the indictment says that there was an effort. He did that in order to get a reduced sentence for another Iranian who is in prison in the United States. But what the U.S. government is saying here is that this is the latest in a series of plots sponsored by the Iranian government against American officials, former officials, and also this journalist in New York City who's been the subject of other Iranian murder-for-hire plots. A huge provocation, alleged provocation by Iran at a really sensitive time with a president-elect coming into office who has promised to step up the pressure on Iran. Murder-for-hire charges announced against 3 people.
Some of the chaos people feared would happen after this election. We know there's a 3rd suspect, Ken, who is still at large. What do we know about that person and their potential whereabouts?
Yeah, that's the man I was just talking about, Farhad Shakiri, who actually talked to the FBI by phone from Iran. He is in Iran, and so for now, outside the reach of U.S. law enforcement, he's the person that was allegedly working for the Iranian government, and he had spent time in the United States and even had served time in prison, according to the indictment.
30 and 3?
And so speaks English, but now is back in Iran. And again, the charging documents say that he was the leader and the orchestrator of this plot on behalf of the Iranian government.
No trolls today? No negative? No comments?
Now, why would these people have a murder-for-hire plot against
Shout out to Anton
Donald
Daniels.
Trump? Why did this never
Major
actually
content
come
creator
out
on
as far as
YouTube,
against Kamala Harris
telling
or
nothing but the
Biden or
truth.
anything like that? Not that we want it, because we don't. And we don't want any of our officials to ever be harmed by any murder-for-hire plot. But why is it that Trump is the most attempted person whose life is to be taken? People take more attempts on his life than anybody that I've seen in history and publicly. And why is
Hey, it's Gigi. Leave a message. Hey, it's Yvonne. I just got my invite. Are you going? That show was the epic. You're the best wings. Can we just get the movie?
See what we got today. Who we got here? Hello. How are you? And what trolling comment would you have today?
Well, let me tell you why, and this is my theory, right? This is my opinion, is that he's an actual threat to world peace. And when he was in office, Iran was broke and had placed so many sanctions on Iran that they couldn't assist in any proxy war or assisting in going against anybody. But now they're in a position to be able to execute flawlessly their plan to create world chaos.
42, 3 likes. What's going on?
Office, which then weakened the United States of America and allowed for them, I don't like this in my beard, allowed for them to continue to have these murder-for-hire plots. You see what I'm saying? So, now that Trump is in office, what we've been seeing in less than 3 days is people across the board have been falling in line, locally, internationally, so on and so forth. We've seen Vladimir Putin, when he was talking about, hey, we need to accept a phone call. I wouldn't be above him making a phone call in order to get in touch with Donald Trump. And he's not even president yet. Think about that. He hasn't even been sworn into office as the 47th president of the United States yet. On January 20th, and we all got everybody falling in line, and world peace is on the horizon. Yet people are still trying to take him out and eliminate him and remove his life because they know that he is a threat to the establishment. Now, another thing that's really bothersome to me is that these people were walking on American soil. And so my first thing is, yeah, I'm pretty sure that they just walked across the border. They just walked across the border. And so, they're leveraging the weakness of the American systems that is put in place to protect us and to vet people that come into this country. And now the FBI have to work overtime, and salute to them for actually finding out what's going on. The FBI have to work overtime in order to prevent an assassination on the president-elect of the United States of America. And that's unfortunate because we don't need that. The last thing that we need is for these liberal extremists to get into a position where they can start running in the Victim Olympics even more because they know that he is a threat to the establishment in the way in which we're going about doing things, and we need to be taking care of business. So yes, there is an Iranian plot there was a plot to try to assassinate President Trump. I would say that we need to continue to hold him up in our prayers, and we have to make sure that we're vigilant in supporting this administration to clean up what we've known to be a corrupt political system. And more importantly, I believe that this is the reason why he's been placed in the office in the first place, because we have a golden age. We have a potential golden age that's ahead of us that can get us back to traditional values while at the same time increasing our economic status in the world and individually so that we can take care of our family and ultimately become the most powerful nation again in the world.
46 and 3.
This is a mistake. I believe that this is by design.
I understand.
Again, we have to make sure that we're vigilant as supporters now that we've been vigilant as voters to support Donald Trump. But the reports are coming out that people are going crazy. And we got to pray for our nation, to be honest with you. I mean, I hate to put it like that because I like to just keep it dry, clean cut and dry across the board and just say, hey, this is what it is and just report the news. But I just got to tell you the truth. We have to pray for our nation because it has not only been in shambles over the last 3.5 years, but people are crazy. People are insane. They're doing wild things that is not in the best interest of our country. It's not. We all know that he's the person to fix this mess, and we need to get back to traditional values. And to get Trump in office is a blessing. The whole nation was practically red, except for these Democratic strongholds, and it's bad. It's absolutely bad. But I am praying for the President of the United States of America, the President-elect of the United States of America. It seemed as though Biden was excited to have Trump back in office. Sleepy Joe can go ahead and get his quote and then get back to it. Ditto for Kamala Harris. You haven't even heard from her. You haven't heard anything about or from Kamala Harris since she did her concession speech. Who knows what her plans are? Gavin Newsom, Letitia James. I mean, we got people that are terrorizing the United States of America right on our own soil with the political office right now, let alone the people that's outside of the country. So yes, we do need to close off our borders. Yes, we need to put more American resources into what it is that we got going on here. And yes, we need to be very vigilant about protecting the United States of America and the people that are our leaders that's ultimately going to get us back on.
I want to introduce you to a phrase Bible scholars use to describe the kingdom of God. It goes like this: already, but not yet.
So after years of being assured by the left that Trump's the worst racist to ever run for president, you saw so many black voters racing to vote for him. Why?
Black men, you could see that they were turning away, especially after Barack Obama would authentically tell the brothers, if you're a black person, it's your duty to behave like this. And fundamentally, that is racist. I already survived Trump and I was living better.
People who just don't like either of them, but still call Kamala Harris or the N-word. I mean, these are things that absolutely suggest that misogyny and misogynoir play into.
The celebrity endorsements really hurt them this time around. We have LeBron James and we have Beyonce, and when Taylor Swift gives you a post, I think ultimately they insulted a lot of their voters.
If you think that trans women are not women, it would be a violation of women's rights.
Trans women are absolutely not women, and that's why we're playing the crazy game right now. I won't play it. I will not address a man that isn't a dress. You can play Halloween. You can put lipstick on a pig. It is still a pig, and it is just Halloween.
Donald Trump's stunning comeback has upended some long-held assumptions about US politics. His landslide winning coalition includes many supposed voting groups that Democrats have long taken for granted. But one of the biggest lessons they will need to learn is that demography is not destiny. Black voters are the monolith, and neither, for that matter, are men and women. Trump made huge inroads with black voters, and in the end, the first black female candidate for president fared worse than Joe Biden. The number of women voting actually increased as a share of the electorate, but a potential first female president
37-3%
of their votes.
It's all
The
good.
worst result
I
for Democrats in
understand.
2 decades. Despite the promises
I can't
of
get no
comedian Ryan
likes.
joke
I
about
can't get no
Puerto Rico
views.
would cost Trump the White House, Trump ended up with 46% of Latino
showing up.
votes, and one with Latino men
Doing what I do.
12 points. That's a new dividing line in US politics. It's not black or white, nor right or left, but right or wrong. To debate that, I'm joined by host of the Candace Owens Show, Candace Owens, and the host of Bet News, Professor and author Mark Lamont Hill. Well, Candace, let me start with you. It was a stunning set of results. But one of the more stunning things to me is that after years of being assured by the left that Trump's the worst racist to ever run for president, you saw so many black and particularly Latino voters racing to vote for him. Why?
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen. That was a big part of my prediction, was that especially black men, you could see that they were turning away, especially after Barack Obama was really patronizing to come out. You left your Martha Vineyards estate and decided to roll up your sleeves and inauthentically tell the brothers how they have to behave. You know, I think it's one of these things where you just can't keep doing the exact same thing all the time. And that's supposed to wake up to your patterns. And it has been a very long pattern of them speaking to people in a manner in which they're essentially telling them that if you don't do this, it's because you're a racist. If you don't do this, it's because you're backwards. If you're a black person, it's your duty to behave like this. And fundamentally, that is racist, right? When you're not even actually saying anything based upon her policies or talking to people as if they're individuals who are having their lives impacted by their bad policy, but rather saying it's incumbent upon you as a woman to vote for her because she's a woman. It's incumbent upon you as a man to vote for him because you're black and she's going to be the first African president, which she wasn't. And so I think, and I think I'm correct here, the celebrity endorsements really hurt them this time around. It felt very cheesy, especially because she wasn't voted for, right? So she had 107 days. She didn't even campaign. They just kind of, it was a coronation more than anything else. It's a coronation. We've picked her for you, and you will do as we are instructing you to do, and vote for her because look, we have LeBron James and we have Beyonce, and that's what you know to do. And Taylor Swift gives you a post. I think ultimately they insulted a lot of their voters.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Lamont didn't really feel that this time. You know, whether it was Jennifer Lopez lecturing Latinos that this is, you can't.
I need more. I would like to have more
black voters. You've got a
negative trolling comments
George Clooney
that help motivate me.
You know, as I did for
Come on,
but it didn't work
YouTube.
for her, and it didn't
Do
work
what
for
you do.
Harris. And I do feel like Candace just said, I felt it actively deterred people. I think it
Please
drove
do not
them
take that
to go and
personal.
vote
If you're an
against what they
actual
saw as
person
the kind of celebrity
that happened to be
multi-millionaire elite. What do you
scrolling,
think about it?
stop by
Well, you guys made a few
and
points
said
I'd like
hi.
to respond to. First,
That
I
statement
don't
was
know
not
if
meant for you.
Celebrity culture or in the wave of celebrities deterred people from voting. I'd rather rely on the data for that. And until I see the data on that, I don't want to make a determination. I think that voters in general want to be spoken to about policy issues. I think they want to be engaged about the things that matter in their lives. But Barack Obama also had a ton of celebrities, and it did work. You know, I think if people like you, celebrities are an added bonus. If they don't like you, if they don't want you, celebrities hurt. I don't think that's the issue here. I think more fundamentally, the question of whether you should vote for somebody because you're black or because you're a woman or whatever is a little more complicated than has been suggested. I think that the message that I would give to somebody is never vote to support somebody because they're black, right? I would never vote for a candidate because they're black, but I would vote for a candidate because I don't think that works. I would vote for a candidate that speaks to my interests. And I think it's okay to say to people,
Hey, I appreciate
there are
you.
some things
Thank
that
you.
affect your community and this candidate
Yeah,
is better for you.
I'm asking, yeah, because that's what usually happens when on here when I go live. Nothing but negative comments.
That they have your community's
And I'm
best
just
interest at
like,
heart. I do think in the case of
I'm like, okay, there's
thing happened, right?
there's not a human being that's
basically
really
saying women's reproductive
sitting around to do that, but
my intention with every fireside chat is to say important things.
like, come
I wish
on.
everybody grew up and
Bring it
thought I should
on.
have a Bible-based life. I should
I'm
get
motivated.
married, I should
Check
do
my
good
page.
things. I happen to think that that's the greatest 3 suggestions for every human being in the world. This is completely
Need more likes.
It's completely unrehearsed, completely unscripted. Very soon. I've been blessed.
It looked like my hair is about 2 or 3 different colors. It looked like there's some gray up there. It looks black. It looks brown underneath this light here.
Half the questions here are from different places around the world.
Hello, my name is Janice Morales. I'm stationed at Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Hi, my name is Sahil and I'm from India.
I feel I have a solution to moral cancer.
reproductive rights are on the table. If you specifically are pro-abortion, you should be voting for Kamala Harris because that's your only chance at saving what has already been a devastating loss. I think that is logical. If you support abortion, Donald Trump.
Man, this dude is full of shit.
And based on Kamala Harris has said.
And you're a college professor?
America, what we always see in America is that white people in general, in terms of the majority, are not going to vote for a Democrat. No Democrat has gotten the majority of white voters since like LBJ. It's been decades. And so ultimately, white people often don't vote their interests. Black people often don't vote their interests. And I think that's the problem. And that's why many of us get so frustrated.
But I had a fascinating conversation with an African-American woman, I guess in her late 30s, maybe early 40s, yesterday. And she voted Trump for the first time. And I said, why? And she said, it's interesting. So I grew up in a family where you just would automatically vote for a black presidential candidate, if there was one, Barack Obama. And now Kamala Harris. And she said that was how my family worked. And she said, and I decided this time that I didn't care about the fact she was a woman or that she was black. I cared about what she was going to do for my personal finances, what she was going to do about the border, what she was going to do about all these things. She talked about a number of issues. And it's interesting, she says, I voted, she said, I was almost colorblind when I voted. I didn't care that she looked like me. I cared about what she could do for me. And I wonder, given how many black voters gravitated to Trump this time, and given particularly how many Latinos did, how many of them were having that same conversation with themselves, saying they may not even like him that much. She wasn't a particular fan of Trump's, but she just was put off by the kind of posturing of people to try and direct you to vote according to your ethnicity.
Yeah. It's fundamentally just not educated to vote for someone and say, well, this person looks like me, so that means that they have my best interests at heart. I just think it's the most uneducated thing you could possibly do. And it's especially rich when you have someone, because Mark, you just said, I maybe wouldn't vote for them because they're black, but I might vote for them because I'm black, right? And I might think that their interests align. I hope I'm paraphrasing that correctly, but the reality is even that fundamentally makes no sense. LeBron James, just because he is black, is not living the black experience of somebody who might be living on the south side of Chicago. It's actually insulting when LeBron James posts something. You saw this in the comments, by the way, if you could use any metric, it was the fact that LeBron James had to start hiding comments because the overwhelming majority of them were negative when he made a post. And that was very propagandist. He was using things that Trump said and splicing it behind clips of the civil rights movement. It made entirely no sense. It was offensive level of propaganda. You have a man who lives in a $100 million Bel Air mansion, okay? He does not touch his own door handles, okay? So when he tells you about how he's worried, he's so wealthy and so connected that he has a son who quite literally is not qualified in terms of his actual metrics to be playing for the Lakers. But because of good old-fashioned nepotism, he is playing for the Lakers besides his father because they thought, well, good advertising, a father and a son playing, And so when you see that taking place and this person pretending to be in the struggle, that's why I said Barack Obama exiting his mansion in Martha's Vineyard to come down and roll up his sleeves and speak to the brothers, it does resonate as insulting. And so at the end of the day, people were moved by, okay, you know what, despite what the media rhetoric is about Trump, how am I actually living right now? And I know they're going to say, well, these statistics show, and they've released this. When I was living under Trump, the gas was low. I was able to afford gas. I was able to afford groceries. And everything the media told me the first time around about him being Adolf Hitler and telling me he was going to put me back into slave chains didn't come true, right? It didn't come true. I already survived under Trump and I was living better. And so there was this common sense element, and I knew that was going to happen. And it's beautiful to see. It's beautiful to see people say, I'm not going to respond to that sort of a rhetoric anymore. I'm not going to vote because I'm a woman or because I'm Black. I'm going to vote what actually makes sense.
Yeah, Mark, you're shaking your head a lot there. Why?
Well, to the first point, Candace, you may not have heard the second part of what I said. I said, I vote for someone because I'm Black. I said, but I also added, I don't presume.
Man, this dude is a college professor.
Represent my interests. So I don't assume that the Black person is the best person to represent the Black community, or that the woman is the best person to represent women's interests. I added that part as well. So we're actually not in disagreement there. I think it's really important to look at the agenda. I have voted in the past for old white men, old white ladies. I didn't vote for Barack Obama when he was on the ticket in 2008 as a Green Party member, because I thought that the white woman who was running against him, or at that point actually a Black woman, had a
I'm very excited to be a part of the Pro Color team because they've always helped me, and
I had a better chance of meeting my issues. I voted for Jill Stein instead of Hillary Clinton. There have been moments where I don't make that alignment, but I do think we have to vote based on our collective community interests. I think it's interesting, though, that
24/5
James can't speak for the conditions of a poor person or the everyday Black experience of the person struggling in America. If we make that argument, because he's a near billionaire, if not a billionaire, then it would be really hard to make the argument that Trump has the ability to speak for the average Joe. It's sort of interesting that Trump's whole candidacy, his whole campaign has been based on saying, look, his whole candidacy is saying, his whole campaign has said, look, I know what is best to heal America. The people who are working in factories, when he goes down to places like Ohio or Pennsylvania, I've literally stood there, as he said, I can get you back working again. I know what you're going through, and I can fix the economy for you. And hear me out. Yes. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying that if you have $1 billion, you might be able to do that. Although I hate billionaires. And if you have no money, you might be representing the interests of the rich. Again, we can't assume a one-to-one correlation between people's own identity and status and what they're representing. Because when we do that, we make a lot of dangerous assumptions. So I'm not going to reject LeBron James because he's rich. I'm going to reject him if I were to, because I don't agree with his argument. Similar to Donald Trump, I happen to agree with LeBron James, though, in this particular case, that Donald Trump did not best represent the interests of the people. But while I don't think identity politics should govern our decision-making process, I also don't want us to be naive either as a nation. I don't want us to assume that nobody rejected Kamala Harris because of her womanness, or nobody rejected Kamala Harris because of her Blackness. And the reason why I say that is because when we look at the campaign trail, when we look at the surrogates for Trump and other people, or people who just don't like either of them, but still calling Kamala Harris a whore or a slut or the N-word. I mean, these are things that absolutely suggest that misogyny and misogyny play into it.
Candace, you want to respond?
Yeah, if I may respond. First and foremost, Trump has never tried to say I'm a blue collar worker, so that's just completely wrong. He actually leans into the fact that he is. Well, you correlated him to LeBron James, and you said, well, he does the exact same thing that LeBron James is doing. No, LeBron James pretends that he is living a struggle. Trump does not. Trump says, I'm rich, I run a company, and I can help you get rich. He literally makes jokes about the fact that he's rich when he's at these events, and he's tossing jokes about, I'm a billionaire, I've done this. Like, he is the New York City stereotype billionaire who basically says, I run businesses, and I'm going to run this country like a business, and I'm going to lift you up, and I understand how trade works because I've been running a business. So I just fully reject that he's somehow blue collar workers are responding to him because he speaks in a way that they believe that he's going to uplift them. That's great. I'm happy we agree on that point, but you did try to correlate him to LeBron James 5 seconds ago, and that's just
yes, you did.
But to respond,
yes, you did.
This is really,
and he's a college professor.
That those who have told the truth about the fact that Kamala Harris did sleep with Willie Brown and was not warranted to the position that she has, district attorney, saying that this came up because she's running for president or because there's some element of misogyny, that is patently false. It was actually leftist newspapers at the time that she was running in Los Angeles. I pulled up these old articles in the San Francisco Chronicle who were scandalized. They thought that it was a scandal that she was being given so much power, that she was being put on boards that she did not deserve to be put on, and that she was being given those positions and making all that money not based on her merit, but because she was having an affair with Willie Brown. Again, these were the leftist San Francisco articles that were covering it at this time. You can go back, way back machine it, and read those articles yourself. She was sleeping with in the past, and now is essentially just being handed another position, not because people voted for her. I think it's relevant to the discussion of whether or not she is qualified for that position. That's fine. And the last thing I'll say is that I found it to be really alarming and borderline satanic in the manner that they ran to women and said, well, this is the election that hinges upon abortion. And I'm not saying this even as a critique of people that are pro-choice. I actually think they moved away from pro-choice. They went like pro-death. It was very bizarre. It wasn't like, the typical we are pro-choice and you are pro-life. They essentially were coming to women, and their only basis for saying to vote for her is, well, the only thing women could possibly care about is whether or not we have the authority to, murder our offspring. I don't think that actually resonated even on the left. They're not that radical on the topic of abortion to make your entire platform hinge upon it. And I think that's the reason why so many people who otherwise are okay with the pro-choice movement, we also saw in those exit polls, moved away. Women moved away totally from the Democratic platform. I think it was a big mistake to hinge an entire election upon the topic of abortion in the way that they did.
Yeah, and Mark, before you respond to that, what I would say about that, and I was discussing this
Don't say
the
nothing.
BBC interview last night, is it seemed to me there was a real inconsistency, if not hypocrisy. On the one hand, Kamala Harris wanted to make the whole thing about, I represent women's rights, vote for me and I'll protect women's rights, and using abortion as her reason for that and bringing back abortion rights and so on. And that's fine, except that at the same time, she has also been actively promoting the issue, for example, of trans athletes in women's sport, which most people can see is an erosion of women's rights. It's unfair. It's unfair. Last week, the United Nations said that 900 medals have been deprived from women athletes by trans athletes competing against it, which is obviously completely outrageous. And we saw the scenes in Paris where boxers with male chromosomes were literally beating up women in front of the world. I mean, the whole thing was grotesque. I don't know how the Democrats could consistently say to women, we are here for protecting women's rights, when at the same time they're advocating a direct attack on women's rights.
Yeah, I want to respond to the point that Candace made prior. Again, it wasn't me pivoting or shifting my position. I wasn't suggesting that Donald Trump or LeBron James were cosplaying. I'm saying that neither is cosplaying. I think my point is not that LeBron James is a legitimate poor person. My point is he's a rich person who is able to speak to the experience of poor person.
No, man.
That's what I'm saying he's doing. And I'm saying no matter what class you're in, if your politics are right, then you can speak to the issue. That's all I'm saying. I was never suggesting the thing that you said that you were representing me to have been saying. It sounds like it was just a miscommunication. So I actually don't disagree with you on the big point. As far as the race piece of this, or the misogyny piece of this, pointing to a left-wing newspaper and saying, well, it's not misogyny. A left-wing newspaper was questioning this. Left-wing newspapers are misogynist. Democrats are misogynist. Misogyny isn't a right-wing problem. It's a universal problem. So just because it's in a left-wing newspaper doesn't nullify.
But it's a valid critique. I'm sorry to cut you off. But I just want to say, do you not think it's a valid critique if somebody is given a job, not because they're qualified, but quite literally because they are sleeping with someone who gave them the position, which, like I said, caused a firestorm at that time? Do you not think it's a valid critique to say, well, they weren't even qualified to be the DA, and now all of a sudden they're trying to tell you that they're qualified to be the president of the United States? So I think that's a valid critique, setting aside misogyny.
If that were
stop.
But that wasn't the point. That was the example you gave that wasn't responsive to the point I was making. I'm saying right now, as she's running for president, there are people saying she's unqualified for the office. I think it's much more of a reasonable.
This dude's a college professor.
Years ago when she was running for DA, I didn't take issue with that, right? Although I don't know enough about the Willie Brown situation to speak.
This is a college professor.
True, then yeah, you should question that. But I'm saying right now in 2024, after serving as vice president, after serving in the U.S. Senate, after serving as a district attorney, after serving after having all of these jobs, the state attorney general. I don't think qualification is the right thing to raise. I think it's perfectly reasonable to say, I don't think she's good at this. I think it's perfectly reasonable to say,
what about
a different issue?
Let's move
to the trans point.
Yes.
What's the trans point? To the trans point, I don't think it's a contradiction for Democrats to do that unless they accept the terms of your argument. Let me be clear. If you think that trans women are not women, then yes, it would be a violation of women's rights to say that trans women should be boxing. I happen to believe.
I'm sorry.
I need to finish. No. I insist on finishing this point because I will not be cut off and misrepresented. Let me make the
thumbs
point.
up.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Ah, he's getting roasted.
I happen to believe that biological males should not participate in women's sports. I am fine taking that position. Yeah, that's my point. Sometimes if you hear me out, you realize we're not even debating. But there are many Democrats who don't take that. There are many people on the left who believe that, and let me just say, I think trans women are women. I think sports are divided in a very particular way. In 8th grade, we make a decision that we need to divide sports up by gender or by sex, right? Because we believe that there's something fundamentally different about biological boys and biological girls and saying we shouldn't be running on the same track team. We shouldn't be boxing each other. I'm okay with that argument. I agree with that argument. I suspect, I don't speak for Candace, but I suspect she agrees with me on this, and I suspect you agree with me on that. So we're not in disagreement on that. But just because I have that position doesn't mean that everyone who disagrees with me is being a hypocrite, because they don't begin from the same premise that I begin from. That's all I'm saying. So I don't think it's contradictory.
All right, let me hang on. But what other premise could there possibly be? The bottom line is, these are people who were born biological males who are competing against biological females, and there's a reason why we don't do that in sport. It's why the Olympics have always separated the sexes, because the truth is, if they didn't, women wouldn't win any medals.
I mean, listen, I know that
I think what you should do is bring someone in who has the position that you're trying to debate instead of.
He's full of shit.
Something that we agree on. So bring on somebody.
You're a college professor.
Can speak for that. But what I'm saying is,
right. I just wanted to add here, like, just to say where we do actually differentiate, like trans women are absolutely not women, and that's why we're playing the crazy game right now, is because we have people that are trying to parse reality. And
this is a college professor.
Women, but they're also biological men. Like, the fact that we are calling them trans women, it is because they are not women. I am a woman, and no matter how you feel on the inside, you are never going to be a woman. And that disagreement, that fundamental disagreement, is the reason why we are playing the crazy game. I won't play it. I will not address a man that isn't addressed as a woman. It's insulting to me. It's insulting to the things that actual women live through in their lives. And you can play Halloween, you can put lipstick on a pig. It is still a pig, and it is just Halloween. So I just feel very strongly about that, and I wanted to make that clear. And that this is a large part, though, Piers, going back to your point of why, because my sisters were on the left, and this is the first election that they voted for Trump. They're from Connecticut. Dyed-in-the-wool Democrats, I guess you could say, and they moved away. And the trans issue was the #1 reason that they did.
Yeah.
What they said was happening in the school system made them fearful. They have sons. They thought it was.
This dude is a college professor.
I'm trying to make toddlers. My sisters have toddlers. Believe that they can be anything that they want and that they're non-binary. They truly believe the left has gone crazy, and they say, "I didn't leave the left left me." And that is an accurate statement to make, because they cannot just see things that are just so plainly obvious. They're trying to criminalize the idea that a woman is a woman, and you can't just become a woman because you feel a certain way on the inside. And the right, like I'm doing right now, I will just say it as it is, right? You are not a woman. I am sorry that you are suffering from a mental disorder. If you were suffering from any I want you to get better.
Oh, she is the shit. Candace Owens. Go subscribe to her YouTube channel.
I mean, Mark, I'll let you respond directly to what Candace says there.
Oh, she is the. Oh!
Let me just point out one thing. There was
Pierce Morgan.
That said that one of the most effective Trump ads during the presidential race towards the end was the one where he had come.
Get him!
She'll call you they them. I'll call you you, whatever it was. And that turned out to be, to the Trump campaign,
This is absolutely great.
one of their most effective ads of the whole race, apparently, which suggests it is a much bigger issue than some Democrats clearly want people to think. I saw Joe Scarborough on this yesterday, very vocal, saying this trans issue has gone completely wrong. The Democrats should not be supporting this kind of thinking. And Bill Clinton, apparently, according to the New York Times, he directly tried to get the Democrats and Kamala Harris and her team to understand that they had to come out against this, but they didn't. And that is, I think, a big problem, particularly, as I say, the reason I think it's a big problem is if at the same time they're trying to say, I'm the person protecting women's rights. One of the reasons why so many women didn't vote for her may be because they just didn't buy it. Sorry, if you did, you wouldn't allow it.
I was part of all those points. I think they're interesting points. I think one, I'm not sure anyone, and again, I need to see the data to speak to this. I don't think anyone is voting for the president based on this issue. It could be an issue that tips the scale, but I think most people aren't voting for president based on this issue. I just don't think it's the priority issue of most people.
Mothers are.
I do. Again, the evidence of that. I can't say definitively one way or the other, but it's never happened before in any election, so this would be the first time. So if it's true, just show me the evidence, and I'm happy to learn from it. But to the bigger point here,
this is a college professor talking like this.
When I say women, I'm including cisgender women, I'm including transgender women. When I say women, I'm including all of their experiences. When I want to protect women, I don't just want to protect.
Takes a rebel to make something beautiful. Beauty takes courage. It's an act of joy. So resist the ordinary. And
Cisgender women, I want to protect transgender women. When it comes to sports, for me, it's about a competitive advantage. If someone were a cisgender woman, which we've seen before, that had high levels of testosterone, but were not trans, just had high levels of testosterone that gave a competitive advantage, I would say they also should not compete. It's not their transness, it's about keeping a level playing field. And I believe as a general rule,
he's full of shit.
But as a general rule, a person who is a trans woman in particular, we see this actually on the converse, when trans male boxers attempt to compete with cis male boxers. The trans women lose. They lose badly, and honestly, I worry about their safety and their health. So it's not a safe playing field, but that doesn't mean that to acknowledge the womanness and the humanity and the fundamental dignity and legitimacy of trans identity is to play make-believe or to play fairy tales. I think we can acknowledge their humanity, and most Democrats, I think, who I speak to, and again, I'm not a Democrat, but I'm on the left, most Democrats, I think, share the position I have. I don't think most people, at least in my neighborhood, my community, I'll talk about Black people in particular, think that trans folks should be playing in sports, right? In ways that create competitive disadvantage.
Well, let's agree on that central point. Okay, hang on. Well, we've got about 3 minutes left. Candice, we're going to end on one thing.
About this. Yeah, I think
you made your point strongly. I just want to ask you, with just a few minutes left, what do you want Trump to do? He's got an incredible mandate here. What would you like to see him do, Candice, to really transform America in a positive way?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that he promised he would do. Secure the borders. I want him to get the illegals out of this country. Fundamentally, is hurting the workers, particularly blue-collar workers. Is hurting Black Americans. It's why you saw men moving away from this. And obviously, Latinos are